There's the sound. Hi, everybody. Still feel like I should have waiting music, hold music. Oh, I did not do a good job promoting this one today. That's okay. Hi. Somebody's joined the chat. Fantastic. We'll get started at a little after 6. Give some people a chance to log on. I wish I had hold music, but in the meantime, I maybe no, I got nothing. Glad you're here. Hey, we've got more people coming on. This is awesome. We love to see it. We're going to get started at okay, no, everybody left. Cool. Okay, well, I will start reading in hopes that people join on at 6:05 at 5 past the hour. Or maybe 3 past. Who's to see? How long can I do the thing? No, I do not have that. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, well, you know what? Why not? Let's get started now. I'm glad you're here. Okay, so hello, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here tonight. Since you're here tonight, that likely means that there is someone in your life going to Waterford, Ireland this summer for the GAA World Games as part of Foireann Deisceart, aka Team South, aka Kalahani Blahana. Coach, you gotta forgive me on that one. I'm still struggling with some of these pronunciations. My name is Allie D'Amico, and for the purposes of this team, I consider myself part of the Dallas squad, but currently I'm telecommuting from Boston. Tonight, I'll be your guide on a tour through the cities in the American South represented on this team. I invite you to enjoy a beverage, learn some things that will make you genuinely better at trivia, and hopefully by the end of the evening, you'll understand why a group of women scattered across 5 states decided to form a Gaelic football team together and fly to Ireland. Before we get to the cities, though, a few things you need to know. We play Gaelic football. There we go. Now, if you're not familiar with Gaelic football, my favorite way to describe it is that soccer and rugby had a baby, but somebody had an affair with volleyball. It's a really fun sport. You've got 2 goals that kind of look like a soccer goal, and you can score them, in the net for 3 points or over the bar for 1 point. Oh my goodness, I love technical difficulties. Okay, there we go. All right. Gaelic football is like soccer and rugby had a baby, somebody had an affair with volleyball. You've got a round ball about the size and shape of a volleyball, but made of a more dense material. You've got 2 goals, kinda like this one with the soccer net, but things with these, like, giant rugby posts on top. You can kick the ball, punch it, and carry it, but if you run with it, you have to bounce it or solo it. That's kind of like juggling off the foot while you run. Every 4 steps, you can score into the net for 3 points, but that's way less likely with this badass in net or over the bar for 1 point. There are usually 15 players aside. If you're playing in the States, that's 13 aside, and this tournament will actually be 9 aside. The pitch is enormous and the game moves faster than it has any right to, given how many rules there are. It's chaotic, it's skillful, it's deeply Irish, and everyone on this team loves it completely. So that's what it is and how it's going. But this is also supposed to be a bit of a historical tour. So let's talk about how it started. The Ladies Gaelic Football Association, LGFA, was only founded in 1974. That's 90 years after the GAA itself was established. The reason for the gap? Well, the idea of women playing football was considered unladylike. And that's not ancient history. That was 1974. That's within living memory of a lot of people on the street. When the first ever Ladies All Ireland was reported on in the Irish press, one reporter described the players' hands as frail, feminine fingers, which, at least he acknowledged were more capable of getting to grips with the Gaelic football. How generous of him. By 1982, the LGFA had more than 4,000 registered members, and there were still people within the GAA arguing that the game was unladylike, that it could cause breast cancer, and that it would hurt the popularity of camogie, all of which is nonsense. And I want to be clear that all 3 of those arguments were made in this same meeting by grown-ass adults. It wasn't until 1986 that women got to play an All-Ireland football final in Croke Park, the home of the Gaelic Games, the most famous stadium in Ireland. 12 years after the association was founded, they finally got access to the main stage. And then something remarkable happened. In 2017, whoops. In 2017, the All Ireland Ladies Football Final at Croke Park drew 46,286 people. By 2019, the number had risen to over 56,000, making it one of the most attended women's sporting events in Europe. Today, the LGFA has almost 200,000 members and over 1,000 clubs across Ireland and Britain alone, and it's recognized as one of the fastest growing female sports in Europe. In 50 years, not generations, 50 years, women's Gaelic football went from being laughed off the field to filling Croke Park. And that's no small thing. Which brings me to us. We are Foireann Deisceart, Team South, a ladies' Gaelic football coalition made up of players from 6 cities across the American South: Dallas, Houston, Denver, Atlanta, Memphis, and Nashville. Most of us are in our mid-20s to mid-30s. We play across multiple different clubs and we live hundreds of miles apart. We train when and how we can. This July, we're traveling to Waterford, Ireland to compete in the 2026 GAA World Games. The games run from July 13th to 17th with matches at the SETU Arena, finals at Walsh Park, Waterford's county ground. Over 2,000 players from more than 100 teams worldwide will be there competing in football, hurling, camogie, handball, and ladies football. We are one of those teams. 6 cities, 1 flag, 1 trip across the Atlantic. Getting there isn't cheap. Flights, accommodations, kit, which is super rad if I do say so myself. Let's bring that back a little bit so you can see how rad our kit is. There it is. So all of these are wildflowers that are made up of the different state flowers of the women on the team. It's my favorite detail. So all of that to say, despite our rad kit, getting back on track. This tonight's event is a fundraiser, and all the money raised goes directly towards getting the team to Waterford. If you want to donate, you can scan the QR code, and we'll put the link in the chat at the end of the night as well. Silly me, I don't have the chat wicked handy. After that, a little later this evening, I'll get the proper link for you. So we're going to start in Dallas. Grab whatever it is you get to by Finn McCool, our home club. Welcome to North at night are indeed big and bright. The prairie sky is actually quite wide and high, but the highways, however, are a lost circle of hell from Dante's Inferno. And I'm looking at you, 75. The two cities have been arguing about whose turn it is to be important for approximately 170 years. Welcome. You've landed in the Metroplex, which is what the locals call the combined metro area of Dallas-Fort Worth, because calling it anything else would require someone to admit that they're the same place, and nobody is really quite ready for that. For many years, I've lived in Dallas, and my teammate Victoria has lived in Fort Worth. We play on the same Gaelic football team, and we have agreed not to discuss this. Just kidding. There's a lot to enjoy about both cities, even if they are very different. So grab your drink, because I don't think you're ready for this petty. To understand the Metroplex, you need to understand that this is a petty feud with no real consequences. Just a lot of sass, quite a bit of silliness, and a big size if you have to drive through Arlington on any given game day. Now, according to my research, Dallas absolutely started it when in 1875, Dallas attorney Robert E. Cowart wrote that Fort Worth was so dull that a panther could sleep undisturbed on a street in downtown, in the Dallas Herald. Eventually, this led to one of Fort Worth's many nicknames of Panther City, but that's a story for another time. Now, Robert started it, but Amon G. Carter took it to the next level. Today, you may know Amon Carter for his Museum of American Art. Highly recommend if you're in Fort Worth. Ol Amon was a Fort Worth newspaper publisher, civic booster, and full-time Dallas hater. This Fort Worth tycoon and petty professional would supposedly pack lunches before traveling to Dallas just to make sure that he wouldn't have to spend a single nickel in support of the city that he considered his arch rival. This is not a metaphor. This man actually brought a bag lunch to business meetings in a city 30 miles away. Carter ran Fort Worth in the early 1900s. He owned the Star Telegram, the largest paper in Texas, launched the second radio station in the Southwest, and the fifth television station in the entire region. He had complete dominion of the media, radio, TV, newspaper, all in service of one mission, making Fort Worth look good and Dallas look bad. His favorite line was, "Fort Worth is where the West begins, and Dallas is where the East pitters out." Now, fast forward to the airport. As early as 1927, Dallas had proposed a joint airport with Fort Worth. Fort Worth declined, and each city went and built its own. Fine, but by the 1960s, the FAA had had enough. Two separate airports 12 miles apart was ridiculous, and federal money was drying up. In 1964, the federal government issued an ultimatum: agree on a location for a shared regional airport, or we'll pick one for you. It took 30 years of negotiations, and they were sometimes, in the words of one aviation historian, quite contentious. Committees were formed, committees were dissolved. Dallas voters narrowly rejected one version of the deal, but Fort Worth kept pushing. Eventually, they hammered out a board: 7 seats for Dallas and 4 for Fort Worth. Dallas got more seats, but Fort Worth got the airport named after them first. Except they didn't. Fort Worthers are still complaining that Dallas got top billing in the name Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. The airport, for the record, is indeed geographically closer to Fort Worth, and Dallas still has their own airport. Shout out to Love Field. It opened in January 1974 and was at that moment the largest airport in the world by land area, 17,500 acres. The dedication ceremony included the first ever landing of a supersonic Concorde on American soil. It was by any measure a triumph. Today, it's still one of the busiest airports in the world and the bane of many a traveler's existence with the layover. Dallas got their name first. Fort Worth got the airport. That's the Metroplex, baby. While we're on the subject of petty problem solving, I have one more thing before we leave the Metroplex. Although, come to think of it, this is really more of a story of petty revenge. On Main Street in downtown Dallas, this is the Jewel Hotel. And right across the street from the hotel is a 30-foot tall human eyeball, complete with blue iris, realistic red veins, and a permanent, slightly bloodshot expression. It just sits there in a gated courtyard staring at you. It's called The Eye, and it was created by artist Tony Tassett. It stands 30 feet tall and is modeled after his own baby blues. He says there's no deep meaning to it, it's just a very large eye in downtown Dallas, watching, waiting, commiserating. Here's the bit that makes it quintessentially Dallas. The plot of land that it sits on was previously home to the Pretoria Building, probably Dallas's first skyscraper, built in 1909. A billionaire hotel owner bought it, knocked it down, and the site sat empty. Now, according to legend, the hotel owner wanted to put a parking garage there, but was denied permits because the community said the parking structure would be an eyesore. So instead, the owner purchased the art installation and it's been there ever since. A parking garage would have been fine, I guess, but now we have a giant eyeball and a park, which in my opinion is way better. So, to Dallas Fort Worth, two cities that spent a century fighting over who's more important, built one of the biggest airports to figure it out, and is still arguing about whose names come first. May your layovers be short, but not too short, your pettiness be productive, and your Panthers enjoy their nap. Up next, we're going to travel to Houston. Now, on to Houston, the fourth largest city in the United States. Fun fact, Houston has next to no zoning laws. And Houston is brought to you by our badass goalie, Grace. So, you can build literally like with this like lack of zoning, you can build almost anything next to anything. And Houstonians have taken this as a challenge. You can get a nail salon next to a warehouse, next to a Michelin star restaurant, next to a mega church. And that's not hypothetical. Grab your drink, this and maybe a snack because this story is going to make you hungry. When you think of Houston, what comes to mind? For a lot of people, it's Beyonce, oil rigs, cowboy hats, and urban sprawl. And sure, fine, guilty on all counts, but Houston has been quietly doing something extraordinary for decades that the rest of the country is just now catching up to. Houston is the most diverse area in the metropolitan United States. Not New York, not Los Angeles, Houston. It has over 10,000 restaurants representing more than 70 countries and American regions. And the thing that makes the Houston food scene genuinely one of the best things about it and anywhere is that you can find food from everywhere. It's that Houston's communities have been blending those traditions together in ways that were ahead of their time. It's largely thanks to the people of Houston that fusion food is what it is today. Houston didn't invent fusion food, but it's been living it since before it was called that. One of Houston's most exciting culinary innovations is the Viet Cajun cuisine, which emerged when Vietnamese immigrants blended their cooking techniques with Cajun flavors. Viet Cajun crawfish, imagine this, seasoned with garlic butter and spices. It became a local favorite, completely redefining Gulf Coast seafood traditions. You order a bucket of shellfish, you put on a plastic bib, and you get to work. It arrives drenched in an intense buttery sauce that melds Vietnamese and Cajun flavors into something magical, rich, garlicky, complex, spicy, sour, and unadulterated umami bomb. Now, before you set off to find your favorite fusion of your wildest dreams, it's worth stopping by Buffalo Bayou to see the bats. When most Texans think of bats, Austin often comes to mind first. But did you know that Houston also boasts its own colony of Mexican freetail bats? Just a few miles west of downtown, the Waugh Street Bridge spans Buffalo Bayou, a 53-mile waterway running from the Katy Prairie all the way to the Houston Ship Channel. Tucked into the crevices of that bridge live approximately 250,000 Mexican freetail bats year-round. Most nights around sunset, they spiral out of the bridge, fly east along the bayou, winding through the skyscrapers of downtown Houston before dispersing into the night sky. 250,000 bats silhouetted against the Houston skyline for free. One of the best shows in town. They eat 2.5 insects each night, and they are objectively doing more for the city than most people. It's a fun little clip of them flying out. Here's hoping it loads properly. There it goes. Like chaotic, blurry bit kind of in the center. That's all of these teeny tiny bats flying out from under the bridge and into the night sky of Houston. It's really quite a nice experience. So, did you know that the Mexican free-tail bat has been named the official flying mammal of Texas since 1993? Texas has an official flying mammal too, because of course it does. And if the bats and the food weren't enough, Houston also hosts to the Space City Scramble. Shout out to the Houston Gales, named, of course, for NASA's Johnson Space Center, and has been home of human spaceflight operations since 1961. When Apollo 13 said, "Houston, we have a problem," this is who and where they were talking to. These are the people who, in 4 days, figured out how to get three astronauts home alive using cardboard tubing and CO2 scrubbers from the lunar module. Houston doesn't just show off, it handles things. Oh, okay. Well, you gotta love technical difficulties. Big part of life. We'll see if we can just move around them. Try it again. There we. So, any guesses on where we're heading next based on the photo? We're about to head to Memphis, but first we need to make a little detour. We're heading northeast of Houston now, up through Arkansas, and as we cross the state line, everyone raise a glass to Cotton Plant, Arkansas. Population, not very many, and birthplace of Sister Rosetta Tharpe. If you don't know the name, write it down. Sister Rosetta Tharpe was the first great recording star of gospel music and one of the first gospel musicians to cross over into rhythm and blues into rock and roll. History has called her the godmother of rock and roll. She played electric guitar like nobody before her, and she directly influenced a young Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, and Johnny Cash, which matters because those four are about to become very relevant. While she never recorded in Memphis, she helped build the sound that would put Memphis on the charts. Tip your hats to Arkansas, folks. We're almost there. Welcome to Memphis, brought to you by Silky O'Sullivan's Celtic Crossing, Cocaza American Italian. So, Memphis sits on the bluffs above the widest stretch of the Mississippi. It's named after Memphis, Egypt, the ancient capital of the Nile, because the founders saw the river and thought, yes, that is the energy. And they weren't wrong. This is the chapter where we get to slow down a little bit. Memphis has earned it. When you think of Memphis, many people think of Sun Records and Graceland. So we'll start there. Everyone knows Elvis recorded at Sun Studio, but what's less told is why any of that was possible. What made Memphis the place where rock and roll was invented rather than anywhere else? It all starts on Beale Street in the early 20th century. Beale Street was a historically Black entertainment district, one of the rare spaces in the segregated South where Black artists could perform, connect, and build careers. W.C. Handy arrived from St. Louis in 1909 and began writing down and publishing the blues music he heard there. Not just that, but also the field hollers, the spirituals, and the Delta sound coming out of the Mississippi. He became known as the father of the blues, but this music was already there. He just gave it a name so the rest of the world could find it. Then in 1950, a white record producer named Sam Phillips opened up a small studio on Union Ave. Phillips believed in the raw power of Black music and its ability to resonate with wider audiences. He gave Black artists a platform and blended rhythm and blues with country influences. Sun Studio became the place where musical innovation echoed the desire for social change. Integration of sound before integration of streets. And then one day, a 19-year-old kid from Tupelo walked in to record a birthday gift for his mother, and the rest is quite literally history. Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, B.B. King all got their start in the 1950s and in Memphis and are respectively dubbed the King of Country, the King of Rock and Roll, and the King of the Blues. Three kings, one city. Fantastic. Then, as if one music studio powerhouse wasn't enough, in 1957, Stax Records opened and Memphis did it again. Located in South Memphis, Stax provided a space where Black and white musicians collaborated during one of the most divided eras in American history. Artists like Otis Redding, uh, Isaac Hayes, Booker T, and the MGs recorded music there that reflected real experiences, songs about love, injustice, hope, and power. Their voices reached beyond the studio walls, echoing the protests and the rallies. But here's the stat that really lands it. Of the first 100 inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, 24 came from within a 100-mile radius of Memphis. Not from one city in the world, not from one country, but from a 100-mile circle around the one city on the bluff above the Mississippi. Blues, gospel, rock and roll, soul. Memphis is home to the founders and establishers of all of them. Memphis didn't just make music, it made the music that made America reckon with itself. And then, as if there wasn't enough to celebrate, there's barbecue. Memphis style barbecue is one of the four predominant regional styles. So Memphis style barbecue is one of the four predominant regional styles in the United States, alongside Carolina, Kansas City, Texas, whoop, and the thing is, yeah, and the thing that makes Memphis barbecue unique, the thing that started the actual arguments at dinner table, the question that is every server and every barbecue joint in Memphis will ask, is wet or dry? Dry ribs are covered in a spice rub before cooking and are normally eaten without sauce. Wet ribs are brushed with sauce before, during, and after cooking. These are not just preparation methods, these are identities, these are ways of life. People have opinions on this stuff, strong ones at that, the kinds that come up at Thanksgiving and start family feuds. The institution that started it all was Charlie Virgo's Rendezvous. Founded in 1948 in a back alley in downtown Memphis, Charlie discovered a coal chute in the basement of his diner and decided that it would make for like a great smoker, barbecue pit, all that stuff. Eventually, he converted the whole place into a restaurant and moved the entrance from the street to the alley. You enter through the alley, and the city named the alley. That's how Memphis does it. So, what are your thoughts? Wet or dry? Let us know in the chat. So, to Memphis, the city that gave the world the blues, rock and roll, soul music, and some of the finest barbecue in the country. You didn't ask for credit, you just keep making things worth singing about. Sláinte, Memphis. Now we are on to Nashville. Brought to you by, oh, whoops. Ancient Order of Hibernians, Kelly O'Brien's Irish Marketplace, and in the Irish Network in Nashville. So we're heading northwest from Memphis up through the rolling hills of Middle Tennessee, and suddenly the highway gets wider, the skyline gets taller, and there are, now I want to be precise about this, an absolutely unsettling number of party buses with neon lights. Welcome to Nashville. In 2017, someone counted 33 bachelorette parties on a single stretch of Lower Broadway in less than about 2 hours on a Friday night, and noted the actual number was probably a little bit higher. That was in 2017 and has only accelerated since then. Nashville is currently the bachelorette party capital of the US, the honky tonk capital, the fastest growing city in the South, and also, and this is what we're here for, one of the most genuinely surprising cities in America once you get off Broadway and start looking around. Grab your drink, we're going in. Now, Nashville will tell you that it is the honky tonk capital of America. And now Lower Broadway is indeed impressive. But before we get too much further in that, I'm sure any Texans on the call would like me to point out that the actual world's largest honky tonk is not in Nashville, it's in Fort Worth. It's called Billy Bob's, Texas. It's 100,000 square feet, holds 6,000 people for dancing, concerts, or both. And this is the wildest part. On Friday and Saturday nights, it features live professional bull riding. Wild. Not a mechanical bull either, live bull riding. They say everything's bigger in Texas, and Fort Worth would like Nashville to know that that includes honky tonks. Eamon Carter would approve. Now, everyone knows Nashville as Music City, but here's the thing about that nickname. It actually dates back to 1873 when Queen Victoria heard a performance by the Fisk Jubilee Singers. This was an a cappella ensemble from Nashville's historically Black Fisk University, and reportedly said, "These young people must surely come from a musical city. The Grand Ole Opry gets all the glory, but the original Music City endorsement came from a Victorian monarch reacting to a Black gospel choir." The Fisk Jubilee Singers live on to this day. This African American a cappella ensemble is made up of students at Fisk University in Nashville. But before Nashville was Music City, it had a completely different nickname, the Athens of the South. This was due to the city's early focus on higher education, culture, and classical learning, and Nashville leaned in. Unlike most civic nicknames that are pure wishful thinking, this one they took literally. Nashville built the world's only full scale replica of the Greek Parthenon in 1897 for the Tennessee Centennial Exposition. Not a scaled down version, not an artistic interpretation, a complete replica, as accurate as scholarship would allow, recreating the chamber of horizontal lines, the inclination of the columns, the decorations of the column, all of it. It was supposed to be temporary, but it was so nice that nobody not wanted to knock it down. I mean, can you blame them? Look at this thing. It's gorgeous. So the city rebuilt it in more lasting materials in 1920, and it reopened as a museum in 1931, ironically taking about the same 10 years as the original Parthenon took to build in ancient Athens. Inside, there is a 42-foot tall statue of Athena, the tallest indoor sculpture in the Western Hemisphere. We can't talk about Nashville as Music City without but before we move on to the next one, just a quick photo. Shout out to my teammate Victoria. That's her lovely dog, and this is Victoria and Madison showing off some of their badass Gaelic skills in front of the Parthenon in the park. So much fun. So, we can't talk about Nashville as Music City without talking about United Recording Press, founded in 1949. It's the largest vinyl record manufacturer in North America. They've pressed albums for Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Dolly Parton, and Taylor Swift. And during segregation, the company built a Motown suite inside of its plant, a private apartment where Black artists could safely stay while recording in Nashville. A vinyl pressing plant with a secret guest suite, keeping the music going in spite of everything. And that's Nashville underneath it all and all the bachelor parties. So, to Nashville, the city that gave the world country music, a full size ancient Greek temple, and more. Yet somehow, underneath all the party buses, neon cowboy hats, and lights, it's still doing something genuinely worth singing about. Slancha. On to Denver. Brought to you by our badass back, Emily. Emily and I play on the back line together, and it's awesome. Love playing in the back line with her. Okay. So, Denver is completely different from anywhere else on this tour. We're heading north and west and leaving what is considered the deep south and heading more for the southwest. If you've never driven into Denver from the east, you're missing something genuinely special. The Great Plains go on and on and on for like ever and a day. As someone who's driven across much of it for many different reasons, there's a reason they're called plain because it's plain. There's not a lot going on out there. And then suddenly on the horizon, the Rocky Mountains rise up like a wall the earth put there on purpose. Denver sits at exactly 1 mile above sea level. And they are very precise about this. They will not let you forget it. They keep bringing it up at every opportunity. Looking at you, cousin. And there's even a marker on the step of the state capitol building indicating the exact spot where you are standing at 5,280 feet. Grab your drinks and possibly a can of oxygen. We're going up. So I want to start with the horse. Y'all, I need to tell you about this horse. When you fly into Denver International Airport, the first thing that greets you on Pena Boulevard, before the terminal, before the taxis, before any sort of welcome signage, is a 32-foot tall, 9,000-pound bright blue horse rearing on its hind legs with glowing red eyes. In the dark, you see the eyes before you see anything else. It's a little terrifying. The sculpture is officially called Blue Mustang, but the locals will refer to it as Blucifer. It was commissioned in 1992 for $300,000, but it wasn't installed until 2008. The 16-year gap is explained by legal disputes, missed deadlines, and the city actually filed a lawsuit against the artist to recover its upfront payment. And one genuinely extraordinary fact. On June 13, 2006, a large section of the sculpture came loose from a hoist in sculptor Luis Jimenez's New Mexico studio. It struck him and severed an artery in his leg. He died at age 65. The horse killed its creator before it was even installed. His sons, Adon and Orion, along with studio assistants, finished the sculpture based on their father's detailed plans. 2 years later, the thing that killed their father went up on permanent display at the entrance of Denver's airport. Denverites have been arguing about it ever since. The red eyes, for what it's worth, are not meant to be sinister. They're LED floodlights, a tribute to Jimenez's father, who owned a neon sign shop in El Paso, Texas, where the artist grew up and learned his craft. A loving tribute to a father rendered in the most alarming way possible, staring down at millions of arriving passengers at 2 a.m. Denver insures it for $2 million, and nobody has petitioned for its removal since 2013. It has been accepted, and it's theirs now. Now, onto a friendlier site, Red Rocks. 10 miles southwest of Denver, tucked into the foothills of the Rockies, there's a natural formation of ancient sandstone that geologists date back around 300 million years old. Two massive monoliths, Shiprock and Creation Rock, each one on each side, around 300 feet tall. And they produce a natural acoustic so precise that it's considered the only naturally occurring acoustically perfect amphitheater in the world. It was the Ute people, the longest continuous inhabitants of what is today Colorado, who first discovered the natural acoustics of the site long before any stage was there. When the amphitheater finally opened in 1941, a dedication began with a Native American ceremony before any classical music was played. The construction was done by the Civilian Conservation Corps between 1936 and 1941. Depression-era workers paid $1 a day, laying 90,000 square feet of sandstone and 800 tons of quarried stone, a project estimated to take 2 years, and it actually took 5. $1 a day, 5 years. The result is one of the most beloved music venues on Earth. Pollster magazine named Red Rocks the best small outdoor venue 11 consecutive years. They renamed the award after that and after Red Rocks, and stopped including Red Rocks in the competition because it kept winning. The award is now called the Red Rocks Award, and Red Rocks is no longer eligible. That is either the greatest honor or the most polite ejection in award show history. The Beatles played their only Red Rock show in 1964. U2 played their 1983 concert film Under a Blood Red Sky, which was recorded there, and introduced the venue to a global audience. John Denver recorded his celebrated live album there, and jazz has been performed at Red Rock since the 1970s. CTI Jazz Festival's Herbie Hancock and a long tradition of bringing jazz out of the clubs and into the open air and the mountains. Denver has produced some serious jazz talent for decades, from vocalist Diana Reeves, who grew up there, to long fan of musician who's actually called the city home. The city only launched its own dedicated Denver Jazz Festival in 2025, 40 concerts across 15 venues over 6 days, and in its second year, it was already sold out. Sometimes you don't realize what you have until someone finally gives it a name. So, have you been to Red Rocks? Did you stare down Blucifer? To Denver, a mile high and then some, home of the world's most acoustically perfect stage and its most aggressively unwelcoming airport sculpture. To the rocks that were there 300 million years before any of us and will be there long after we're gone. And to Lucifer, still watching, still glowing, not going anywhere. Sláinte. We've made it to the last stop on our tour, Atlanta, brought to you by Thomas O'Reilly's Irish Pub. So we're heading back east from Colorado and dropping into Georgia. As we approach our destination, the traffic triples, the highways multiply, and the skyline rises up out of the Georgia pines like it has something to prove. Atlanta is the self proclaimed capital of the South. It has been burned to the ground, rebuilt from scratch, hosted the Olympics, and produced more hit records than almost any other city on earth. It's also home of the world's most famous soft drink, which is where it was invented. And I need you to hold on to your glasses for this as a direct response to a ban on alcohol. I should not have grabbed a Coke for this drink. The fizziness is something else. All right. So let's start at the beginning. Atlanta's original name was Terminus because it was literally the end of the rail line. The city was renamed Marthasville and then Atlanta. And then in 1864, William Sherman's troop burned most of it to the ground, sparing only the churches and hospital thanks to one Father Thomas O'Reilly, an Irish immigrant who was able to convince General Sherman to not burn down the churches because they were made of wood and they were like holy places. And that also saved a lot of the housing in the neighborhood because the wood buildings, like it didn't, the fire didn't spread there. So thanks to Father Thomas O'Reilly, namesake for one of our sponsor bars, Sláinte y'all. Great thing. And thanks to our coach, Katrina, who shared that little fun factoid with me while I was researching this. Okay. Atlanta's response to being burned to the ground was to rebuild faster than anyone thought possible and immediately start competing for everything. That competitive, slightly aggravated energy produced Coca Cola. In 1886, Atlanta and Fulton County went dry. They banned alcohol entirely. A pharmacist named John Pemberton decided to develop an alternative and created Coca Cola. The original formula did contain cocaine extracted from coca leaves, which also gave the drink the first half of its name. It wasn't removed until 1903 because you see, the temperance movement really only cared about alcohol, and that's it. Also, cocaine was considered routine medicine at the time. On May 8th, 1886, he brought his perfect syrup to Jacob's Pharmacy in downtown Atlanta. Thought I had a photo of the pharmacy, my mistake. Uh, in downtown Atlanta, where the first glass was poured. In its first year, the drink served about 9 glasses a day. 9 glasses a day. That's where the most consumed beverage in human history started. 9 glasses a day in a pharmacy. Atlanta, uh, in Atlanta, because the city banned alcohol. So, to recap, the temperance movement banned alcohol. Atlanta responded by inventing the most consumed beverage in human history, which did start out as a cocaine tonic in a pharmacy. Uh, but, at least it didn't have alcohol. So the temperance movement got exactly what it asked for and more. George really committed to the bit on sobriety, and the industry never really recovered. To this day, Georgia ranks somewhere in the 40s for breweries per capita. So, what do you call a soft drink? Soda or pop? Well, if you're traveling into the South, that debate is useless. It's Coke. Doesn't matter what state, doesn't matter what brand, it's Coke. Coke, lowercase, generic. Fun fact, the Coca-Cola company actually spent 30 years trying to stop this. All this time until I researched for this tour, I thought this was a very clever word of mouth campaign started by the Coca-Cola company, but no, they spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure their brand stayed its own thing. But after about 30 years, they were resigned. They admitted defeat and eventually just trademarked Coke for themselves. Capital C. Atlanta's drink didn't just conquer the market, it conquered the noun. So, between that and Georgia's lack of beers for export, is why tonight Georgia's beer recommendation is a Coke on the rocks if you're feeling fancy. Now, on to the airport, because nothing says Atlanta like the airport. Hartfield Jackson Atlanta International Airport has been the world's busiest airport by passenger traffic every single year since 1998, except for 2020, for obvious reasons. But in 2024, it served 108 million passengers, 108 million people through one airport in 1 year. That's roughly a third of the entire United States population passing through Atlanta annually. Texas likes to say everything's bigger in Texas, and sure, Fort Worth does have the world's largest honky tonk, and Dallas has that giant eye, but Atlanta has the world's busiest airport. DFW, for the record, is number two. Turns out almost everything is bigger in Texas. My favorite fun fact about the airport is that it actually started as an abandoned racetrack. Mayor Walter Sims signed a lease on it in 1925 and committed the city in to turning into an airfield. Atlanta took a racetrack and turned it into a regional airport and then just kept going until it became the busiest airport on the planet. That is an extremely Atlanta thing to do. So, here's to Atlanta, burned to the ground in 1864, rebuilt by 1865, accidentally invented the world's most popular drink, turned a racetrack into the world's busiest airport, and then told the entire music industry exactly where the future was coming from. 5 cities, one team, one trip to Waterford. The South has got something to say. Slantama. Whoops. So, that is the American South. Dallas and Fort Worth with petty squabbles, but always a lot of fun. Houston quietly feeding the world and housing 250,000 bats 2 miles from downtown. Memphis, the city that gave American music its spine and asks you every single time, wet or dry. Nashville, where there's so much more to explore beyond the neon rodeo. Denver, where you can enjoy music in nature if you make it past the killer horse. And Atlanta, burned to the ground and rebuilt from scratch, and still somehow the busiest crossroad on the continent. 6 cities, 6 chapters, one team. I hope that you've learned something tonight, and I hope that you've got some new plans for your next vacation. I hope at least one of you is going to walk into a restaurant in the South and order a soft drink and listen for what they call it. Now, before we go our separate ways, I want to introduce you to some of the people that are on our team. You've got myself, I'm the captain, along with my colleague Victoria. We were in the Dallas Fort Worth photos. We've got Caitlin and Megan out of Memphis. We've got Emily out of Denver, Grace out of Houston, Kelly, our coach Karina, Virginia, and Lauren out of Atlanta. It's just going to be a great time. We really are looking forward to this trip, and we appreciate your time and support, whether you've listened to this, whether you've contributed to our fundraiser, or maybe bought one of our rad stickers. Thank you very much for being here tonight. I really hope you enjoyed the tour. I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat. And thank you so much for being here. Slancha. Have a good night, everyone.